All right, I think we're good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the newest workshop as a part of the series for the SUI X KuCoin Lab Summer Hackathon. And my name is Henry. I'm on the APAC DevRel team for SUI. And today we have Thibaut from BlockVision joining us, and and we will be talking about the topic of indexing APIs for SUI and for applications building on SUI. So yeah, thank you for joining us, and you now have the stage.
Thank you very much, Henry. Really happy to be here with everyone today, and really happy to join the SUI KuCoin Lab Summer Hackathon. I think this is a great initiative, and so we're really happy to be here. Today, so I'm Thibaut, as you mentioned. I'm working with BlockVision, mostly responsible for BD. And so today I'm going to show you a little bit about indexing API and hopefully help in terms of explaining what is available and making the bridge between teams that work communicating with other teams like in BD, in marketing and so on, and more technical teams. Myself, I'm not really a very technical person, so we will not get too much deep into the technicalities within this topic. But today, mostly, I want to help a little bit for people who are less technical, understand how basically the tech team is going to look at several possible solutions, and also help enhance the communication between the tech team and people less technical so that projects can run smoother and understand what is available for builders to supercharge their development. So let's get started. Let's get directly into it. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about BlockVision, what we do, just so you have a quick understanding, and then we'll get into the API and using APIs and what you can do with them. BlockVision, we're working heavily on SUI. We're a staking validator. That's one of the first things we do. We provide RPC nodes. We also run in Explorer, which is suivision.xyz. You will see it a little bit throughout this workshop. And finally, we also provide indexing services. We were on SUI since mainnet. We're already there a bit on testnet, and we were live day one of mainnet. And we're extremely happy and proud to be supporting SUI chain. Now, throughout this talk, we're going to see different APIs. You're going to see APIs of different types. One of them is going to be a coin API. You're going to see also APIs for name services, account for portfolio, DEXs, NFTs, and also historical activities. We're going to delve into all that after a few slides. But before we get into that, I also want to take time to talk about the use case. And I feel the use case is extremely paramount for projects to identify what they can do with APIs and how they can enhance the functionalities they offer, for example, or supercharge their development. So let me take a few standard use cases and how, for example, those projects would be able to use APIs. First of all, we can consider a marketplace, let's say an NFT marketplace. And obviously, an NFT marketplace, you're going to have to provide a lot of information to your end users when they come to your platform. So this kind of information would be things like the listing, information about the collection, descriptions, showing the metadata correctly, all of this. You would have something similar for name service. You would have information to display for a DEX. That would be more about like fungible token transactions. You would have this need for a wallet, obviously. A wallet would need to show, for example, what a certain address holds. And so that would be a portfolio API in this case, for example, to display both the NFTs and the coins of a certain address. And then finally, for a Launchpad, you also have some possibilities with coin APIs, for example. So we're going to get into more details for all of that. Here's a little bit of a list of some of the APIs we provide today. We're going to give a quick overview of all of them, and for some of them, we'll also give like a live example so you have an understanding of how that works. Talking about how that works behind the scene, And before I talk about how this works behind the scene, I'd like to talk about why you want to use API. And I think this is especially useful for people a little bit less technical to understand, okay, what is the advantage of using an API? Because very often when you're deciding what to do with a project, or like how to lead a project and what is the next step, you need to understand what is your core competency, what is your competitive advantage. And if, for example, one of your competitive advantage is going to be the code that you pull out and all of the certain functionalities you pull out, then it makes sense maybe to do things in-house. But for a lot of people, doing things in-house doesn't really make so much sense. Because for a lot of people, let's say I am a portfolio tracking solution. Um, Portfolio tracking APIs today are available. So you could use a third-party portfolio tracking API to save time and effort on your development, and then focus more, for example, on the UI, on other functionalities that your end users are going to vibe with. So it really depends for each project what you want to focus on. But very often, using already ready building blocks like APIs are going to help you save time, save effort, and your tech team is really going to be happy because they can focus on other things. And it could also help you to get to market much faster. Now, not only do you save time and effort, but you can also work on enhancing functionalities, because the time you don't spend working on some of those building blocks, like getting the information with the API, you can spend it on other things, like how you display information, or maybe working on things that don't exist yet, or improving how you get liquidity or different things based on your project. Another thing that is extremely interesting for project is that if they do it internally, they will have to support the whole infrastructure. If you do it externally and you use a partner like ourselves or some of the other people that provide API in the space, you would be able to scale much more easily. So you would be able to see the kind of request that you get from your project in a certain time basis. And based on those requests, you can just scale up or down to match the request. While if you were to do that yourself, it could be much more troublesome. Here you get everything, the information, the dashboard, you can check the request you have, the traffic you get, and based on that, you can scale up or down very easily. Finally, the last 2 points that are really useful for APIs are going to be in terms of maintenance, support, and security. When you're doing everything in-house, you will have to spend time and effort at the beginning to develop how you get the data, but then work doesn't stop there. Your engineers, your developers still have to work on considering changes that were made to the chains, to the protocols, and how you have to update some of your APIs or what you've built to reflect those changes. Or let's say a vulnerability is found, you need to patch this vulnerability. If you do that in-house, all this responsibility falls on you, and you need to spend the time and always be up to date with all the latest development. That takes a lot of time that you do not spend on your core competency. If you use an API provider like ourselves, we would help to ensure maintenance, support, and security. And for example, in terms of SUI, every time something new happens, we usually update within the first 24 hours, and we are always up to date with everything happening. So those would be some of the main advantages of using API, and just wanted to reflect a little bit on this so we get an understanding of how that can help teams to build faster and really focus on what they're good at. Now, understanding how an API works, I would say instead of going from the left to the right, we can instead go from the right to the left. So let's say here is what you're displaying. You're, for example, displaying the NFTs that an account holds or something like that. That would be what the end user sees in a very nice graphical interface. Now, in the backend, to display this information, you would most likely call an API with some code, and you would get a return on the code, which is going to give you the information to then display here on the right. And so here on the left would be, for example, the API that you can call or the method that you can call. So how does that work? Very simple. You're going to start on the backend. You're going to get some code in the backend, a return on your code, a result on your code, and then this data that you get, you're going to make it visible to the end user in a very nice UI. And that would be how it's going to work. Now, if you have a good understanding, basically, we can get into the few different APIs, and we're also going to do some examples just to explain for each of them, for some of them, how that could work. So the first API I would like to introduce to you today is going to be the account collection API. Talking, with different APIs, you're going to see that different providers, sometimes they have different names. Sometimes it's not so easy to understand exactly what this API does. So I feel like to make it very easy, I'd like to use a question for each of them. I would say this API, the account collection API, the question is going to answer is who owns what. So when you call this API, basically what you're going to get is you're going to get the information for an address, and basically what this address holds in terms of NFT. And so in terms of details, if you get a little bit more technical, what you get exactly are going to be the collection image, the name of the collection ID, the quantity, and also the package ID. So this is great, but how can you leverage that? How can you use that? Well, that depends really on the kind of project that you are. If you're a NFT marketplace, for example, probably when your user connects or when your user wants to check a wallet, you want to display what this wallet holds in terms of NFT collection. So you could use this API to get all this information in the backend, and then you would present that to your end user in the front end. That would be for an NFT marketplace. If you're an analytics platform, that would also be something useful. Finally, if you're a portfolio tracker, for example, you want to help users be able to see what they hold on different addresses. For example, if they connect different addresses and so on, and keep track of that. So that would be a way to do that with this API. Now, this API, when you call it, you're going to need to provide a few different information. In this case, the most important information that you're going to have to provide is going to be the owner. So the owner essentially is going to be the address of the wallet. And then you would have some other parameters like page size and page index. But for those parameters, basically, you can just leave at default if you want, or you can change them. We're going to see an example on this, just so you get a better understanding of, for example, how this one will work. So let's say I'm here. I'm looking at this account here on SwiVision, which is the Explorer that we developed. And so, okay, we present this information. We present, for example, like some NFTs here, like Bull Shark, Drip Cat, say Sweet Ticket, and so on. Okay, great. But how do you get that information, and how could you, for example, provide that information? Well, you could do that by going to BlockVision and by using the API that I've mentioned. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to BlockVision, and here we have the doc. And in the doc, we're going to have the API that we mentioned, which was the retrieve account collection API. So how can I use that? We mentioned in terms of what I would need the address. So I'm going to take the address that I had here, that I copied, 764 at the end here, okay? And then we mentioned, for example, you have the page index and you have the page size. So you could leave it at this, or you could increase that based on your needs to get different amount of information. Here, we're just going to leave it as it was and just try it. Now, when you are going to use the API, you're going to be able to use different languages. So the idea here is you could obviously do that yourself and write the code yourself if you want to, but you could also use our help, get our help basically to just go faster. And so you could decide, for example, to get the request in Shell, in Node, in Ruby, PHP, Go, or several languages here, just to help go faster in terms of development. And so here, for example, I'm going to go in Go because I know a lot of people, they like to work in Go in terms of development. So we have our parameters here, right? We mentioned here the address, 764. We're going to try it and see what we get, and we're going to see if it matches, for example, what we get. So here we have a different, we have a lot of different things. What do we see? We see the SWI arc. We're going to see the drip cat, for example. We're going to see the SWI ticket here, and we're going to get different information like the object type, package, name, the image, and the URL, so that you can directly query the image and show it, the description, and the quantity, as you mentioned. So you see we have the same here collections that we just discussed with this API. So you could obviously use that for different solution, as I mentioned, but that would be how it works in terms of the backend, right? And then how you can display that in the front end. So hopefully this first one was useful to kind of understand a little bit how it works. We're going to get to the second one, which this time is going to be the single collection info API. So how is this one different from the previous one? This one answers the question, what is this specific collection? So before we were looking at an account and we wanted to know all the collections that this account holds. Now we're looking only at one collection. So that could be Fuddies, that could be Misfit, that could be any of the collections on SWI. And you would want to know, okay, what is this specific collection, and get information on it. Sorry. What information you can get is going to be the collection image, the name, the description, the collection ID, holders, package ID, and also the total supply. And so that would be, again, very useful for different projects based on what they're doing. So if you're a marketplace, for example, you would want to provide your users with very comprehensive information about one specific collection. Knowing, for example, okay, what is the total supply, and then being able to see, all the info about this collection. Analytics platform, pretty similar. If you're a portfolio tracker, let's say you have the previous one, showing, for example, what a account holds, you would also, when the user clicks on the collection, be able to go to a different page and then display basic info on the collection. So that would be what this API is going to do. Okay, so let's say you want to call this API. How can you call it? What do you need? In this case, you're just going to need the object type. Once you have the object type, you can call this API and get all the result. So here we have some code here, but we can do we can try to do a live example together just to see how it works and basically see what you would get. So let's say I go, for example, to BlueMove, and let's say I am looking at Misfit, right? So Misfit collection. Now, they're going to provide us with a type. So what I can do is I can use this type. I can go back to BlockVision. I'm going to use the API that we mentioned, retrieve single collection info. And so the only parameter that I needed in this case was the object type, which I got, for example, here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give this object type, call the API. Okay, what do I get? I'm getting the total supply. So here, for example, 7,773. I'm getting description. I'm getting the number of holders. I'm getting the name, Misfit, image that I will need to display, package, object type, and so on. So you would be able to get all that and then display all this information. You would also be able to display information, for example, like if I go to a different collection in the Explorer that we developed, the SWI Explorer. Let's say I go on Fuddy, for example. I would want to be able to display information on Fuddy and things like the number of items, the number of holders, and so on. And so I would also be able to do that with that API. Okay, so we've talked about this single collection API. Let's go for the next one now. The next one is the collection holder API. So this one is going to be very useful if you want to dig a little bit deeper in one collection and you want to understand better, okay, who are the top collector of this specific collection. In other words, you want to know the addresses holding the most NFTs in this collection, the big whales of this collection, for example. And so what you're going to get is you're going to get a list of different account addresses and also the holding quantity that they have. So let's say this address holds 100, this address holds, and so on and so on and so on. That would be what you would get. How would that be useful? That would be useful for an NFT marketplace because, for example, if you're an NFT marketplace, you probably want to highlight some of the top collectors, and maybe you want to provide a little bit more information. If you're an analytics platform, probably you want to show some of the top holders within one NFT collection. Why? Because people want to know who are the big whales of this NFT. And probably they want to maybe monitor some of the big whales in this collection. If you're a trader, for example, maybe you want to know what those addresses are doing because it can influence maybe the price of a collection or the future of a collection and so on. So you would get basically this list of addresses very easily with this API. Finally, if you're a portfolio tracker, let's say you show some different collection, you could imagine a lot of information you can display for the user, like, for example, a ranking. And so you could gamify a little bit the experience and say, like, okay, this person has the most of this collection and he gets like I don't know, like a gold trophy or something. There's a lot of different possibilities as long as you have the basic information, and this API will provide to you the basic information. So how do you get the information from this API? Once again, the main thing you're going to need is the object type. You specify the object type, and you're going to be okay. You can change a bit of the page size and page number as we did previously, but you just go with the direct one. And so that would be what you can do with the collection holder. The next one I would like to introduce to you is going to be the NFT list. So we've talked a lot about having a global understanding of what an account holds, specificities of one collection and so on. But then your users, maybe they want to show all the NFTs of that collection. So you're going to have to display that. So how do you display that? Well, you're going to use this API. This API is going to answer the question, what are the individual NFTs in this one collection? And so it's going to give you the list of all the NFTs API within that collection. Now, you would get the image, obviously, the name, the description, the standard, based on the standard that they're using for the collection, the owner, and the object ID. So let's say you're a NFT marketplace. When the users they get into a collection, you will want to display everything, all the NFTs of a collection. So you would be able to use that to do so, for example. If you're an analytics platform, again, people might want to know everything about different collections. And then if you're a portfolio tracker, probably again you want to be able to enter one collection and check everything. To do that, you're going to have several possibilities, and you're going to see it's quite powerful actually. You just specify the object type, which is going to be your collection, and then you would get the total listing. Or you can also list with an owner. So this one is optional, but if you indicate the owner, you would only get the NFTs held by this owner. So remember how we talked about the previous API, about the top holders? Let's say you identify this address holds 130s. I could then call the collection NFT list, write the FUDDY object type, write the address of the owner, and then it would display all the 100 FUDs that this address holds. That would be another way for me to use the API. So it can be very powerful to show both what one address holds, or simply to show the whole collection of an NFT. So let's say, for example, we have FUDs here on SwiVision. I can click on FUDs. I'm going to get some information. And I'm also going, since my internet is a bit slow today, but I'm going to be able to display all the different FUDs, for example, and that would be through calling this API. Let's say I go on Clutchy, for example. Again, if I enter FUDs, I would probably want to display all the FUDs. And so, another marketplace would probably want to do the same thing. And so you would be able to do that with this API, essentially. And so we're going to do this also so that you can see a little bit. Okay, so let me try to go, for example, with FUDs in this case. We get the contract here. Okay, we have the object type here. There we go. So we're going to go NFT list, as you mentioned, right? List of a collection of the NFTs. I'm going to go here. Here you can see I can specify the owner if I want to, and I just go try it. And so here I would get that is a success. And I would also normally get a list. Probably yeah. Okay. Now it's fine. Let's go to the next one. So the next one is going to be in terms of coin holder. Coin holder is also something you can do a little bit more for the DeFi part, for DEXs. There's going to be something that can be quite useful. What you would be able to do is to get all the different holders of one specific coin with this API. And so you get all the different holders of that coin, and so you're going to be able to get details like the address of the holder and the quantity of the coin held. It's definitely something you want to know, for example, for different parties. If you're an exchange, maybe you want to see some of the top holders. If you're in analytics, probably also you want to do that because you want to know who are the big players and who can influence the future, the price potentially of one coin. But you should also imagine something maybe from more social platforms like, badge if you reach a certain amount of coin held and so on. Something you could see in this case, if I go again to the BlockVision, the SwiVision Explorer, and if we go to coins here, for example, if I go on a token like Sui or Sidious or whatever, I would be able to query by holders. And when I query by holders, I would get the holder account, the balance, and also the percentage. And so you would be able to basically display all this through calling this API. So it can be pretty useful also for this. And so for this, you would need the coin type. Okay, we've talked a little bit about NFTs. We've talked a little bit about fungible tokens. Now, I would say one of the highlights and something that can really be useful to a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people starting to use that and really helping in many different ways. So I'm going to spend a bit more time on the marketplace volume. So the Marketplace Volume API, what it's going to do is going to help you analyze trading volume. And so the idea is going to answer the question, how much trading volume has occurred on all the different marketplaces? And it's going to help a lot because when you get that, you're going to get info about also different timeframes. So you could go by day, you could go by a week, 2 weeks, months, and also all time. And currently, in terms of marketplaces, this API supports Clutchy, Bluemove, Token Souffle, and Keepsake. and we're always trying to improve and add more marketplaces. We see more marketplaces come on the scene and gain momentum. So it's definitely something that we're going to do. Now, how can you use this? Well, you can use this for a few different reasons. Let's say you're a investor. Maybe you want to see, what is happening in the space. Either you want to know if NFTs are hot or they're not so hot, or you want to know where is the trading happening. So this is going to give you all this information. If you're in analytics, you also probably want to know that. You don't live in a vacuum either. So you want to know maybe like overall the volume that you're going to see maybe on Sui compared to all the chains, and what trends you see in terms of the volume of NFT collection can give you on marketplaces and NFTs in general, can give you a lot of information on what could happen. And then if you're working with a marketplace yourself, you probably want to see which are some of the big players and how other players are gaining or losing volume, and understand how it's working in terms of dynamics. Is it because like they're including more features, different features, and so on, and you can see based on the data all the changes happening. So for this, you would simply need to specify the marketplace you want, and what you're going to get. I can show you on SwiVision again. We've released very recently a dashboard for NFTs. And so here, for example, you have the marketplace with the volume. So you would see if I go maybe daily, or if I go like 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. You can also go all time. We haven't shown all time yet because Sui is still pretty young as a chain, but definitely it's something that we will add in the future, and you could add that by simply calling the API. So here you would see, for example, which marketplaces are popular, and also how the volume is changing overall for the whole market, for those marketplaces, or a marketplace more specifically, and that could help you get a lot of information. So I would say this one can definitely be useful. And what is great is really, for example, what we display here. You could very easily display something like that on your marketplace, on your portfolio tracking, just by calling this API. So the idea here really is to make the space better. And so it's definitely something you can do. I've also seen a lot of people maybe writing some education articles and just trying to help people stay up to date with what is happening on Sui. And just using those kind of APIs, for example, is really great, because you can just at a glance, get an idea of, okay, what are the trends? Do I see the volume going up or going down? Where are people trading, and so on? And so it can also help, to then provide information to enthusiasts or just simply users using the Sui chain, or simply NFT enthusiasts on Sui. Okay, we've talked a little bit about the marketplace volume. Now, what if you want to talk about one collection specifically? That's also possible, of course, right? So in this case, you would call the collection volume and floor price API. And so this one, what it's going to do is going to give you basically, is going to answer, okay, what is the trading volume and the floor price for this collection? And so this is going to be very useful, again, for different kinds of projects, because with that, we're going to get the volume, again, for different time periods, just like the previous API we mentioned, but for the overall volume in marketplaces. This time is going to be for one collection. And so it could be for a day, for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month, for all time. Now, it could be very useful for investors because, okay, you know overall the trend of NFTs. Now you want to know for this collection exactly, do I see volume going up? Do I see volume going down? Trying to understand a little bit what is happening. That's definitely something you could do. If you're doing analytics, that could also be something pretty useful, because you could use that, for example, get then the floor price, and then give an idea of, okay, how much is the NFT portfolio of this user worth, for example, and then also tracking the worth over time based on the floor price, for example, and then give the user more information if the user wants to get more information. You could do that pretty easily with this API. Finally, if you're an NFT collector, you could again very easily see a trend and understand how your project, your NFT project is developing. Are you gaining volume? Are you losing volume? And then you can think about what you can do to help boost potentially the volume, or like different plans you might have. So always useful to have data to make informed decisions. Now, to do this, you would only need the object type for the collection, and then you would get all the information. If I show you again, for example, if I show you here on SwiVision, we have the marketplaces and we use this API for the marketplaces, and then we have here a different collection, and you would see, for example, for these, I would get basic information with the previous API we mentioned earlier to get the number of items, the name, the holders, and then I would also get information like the price and the volume thanks to the API, and here we just display for 24 hours, but you could get much more through the API, because you would be able to display 1, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, or all time if you wanted. So again, if you wanted to do something like that, that would be possible. And that would be very helpful, I guess, for a lot of people. Okay, we've talked about this. Now, what if you want to get a little bit more details? Because we understand that details are going to be very, very important when you talk about NFT collections. So collection detail API, this one is going to basically answer the question, what are the specific activities happening in this collection, only in this one? And so you are going to get all the events like the minting, like the transfer, like the listing, like the bid cancel, listing close, sell, everything that is happening. You're also going to get a timestamp for that, and also the event type, and also know the marketplace, so where it happened. Package ID from which address to which address, for example, which was the buyer, which was the seller, or the opposite. And then transaction, object ID, object type. You get everything basically. So why is it useful? It's useful because if you're an NFT marketplace, you probably want to show what is happening within a collection, all the activity within a collection. So for example, if I go here, say I go to Souffle, and here like on the SwiftRent, right? If I go to the collection, probably I want to know what is happening. I want to know, okay, I have a transfer here, I have a transfer here, I have a listing here, I have a buy or something. Most of the marketplaces would definitely need to provide something like this, like an activity tab. And so obviously I'm not going to go to all the marketplaces, just a few, but for the marketplaces I'm not showing, I think most of them are really showing that and doing that very differently. But in all situations, you would be able to get all this information basically by calling the API. And here, for example, again, like on SwiVision, it's also something we do. If you go to Fuddies, for example, and I go to the activities in Fuddies, I would be able to know everything happening. So here I see there is a listing that closed, I see something is on sale, something there was a listing that was created, something there was a listing that was closed, and I would also see where it happened. So for example, here I would see a lot of activity for Fuddies on Clutchy, but I would also get that on different marketplaces for different collections and so on. So again, can be very useful for marketplaces, for users, for portfolio tracker, to be able at a glance to see everything happening in terms of activity for this collection in particular. Here we haven't seen a lot of mints, for example, because Fuddies is more of an older collection on Sui and an established collection. But if it was a newer collection that is just launching, you would also be able to see some mints and so on. And you would basically be able to get that through the API. So when you want to call this API, what do you need? You would be able to get that with the object type, the event type, and then again, page size, page index. You can choose to leave it as it was or to modify based on your needs. Okay, that's great. We've talked about the collection in general. right? So we talked, let's say, about one collection, maybe Fuddies, maybe Misfit, maybe Sweet Friends, different collections, right? One collection in general, what is happening for all this collection. Now, what if I want to talk about one NFT? What if I want to show, okay, this one NFT, what happened to it? I can do that with this API, with the NFT detail API. So this one is going to do the same thing, but for each NFT. And so here the question it answers is, what are the specific activities with this NFT in particular? And I'm going to get the same things, like minting, transfer, listing, bid cancel, listing close, sell, everything. I'm going to get all that. Again, with all the information you might need, like the timestamp, the event type, the marketplace, the package ID, from who to who, the price, all of that. You're going to get that. So that would be useful because people want to know in terms of activity when they check a collection, but they also want to know when they check on one NFT in particular, what has happened to that NFT. And so going to be very useful for marketplaces, for platform for analytics in general, and also for owners just to know, okay, so this is what happened to my NFT. Maybe you want to get an alert or something, and be notified when something is happening. Totally possible. Could be also, like portfolio tracking and so on. You could definitely use that and get that information. What do you need if you want to call that API? You're going to need the object type, you're going to need the event type, and then page size, page index, as mentioned. You can choose to leave it as it was or modify based on your needs. Okay, one more I want to talk about. This one is going to be the NFT history owner info. So this one answers the question, sorry, who's owned this NFT in the past? It's important because, especially in NFT, people care a lot about provenance. They care a lot about knowing the history of this NFT because this history is on chain. So sometimes, for example, an NFT that has not changed hands might be more valuable than an NFT that has been traded again and again and again. Depends on collectors, depends on different things, but that would basically be the information you get when you call this API. You would get all the ownership change, the owner address, timestamp, transaction, checkpoints, transaction block, and so you would be able to display all that. And so very useful for a NFT marketplace, for example, because you want to see which person owned this NFT at which point in time, and so on, and then display all that for your users. Could be useful for analytics, for example, to see how one NFT has been moving hands over the life of the NFT. Could be also useful for the NFT owners when they want to really understand, okay, where does this NFT come from? Who was the owner of this NFT before me? Has there been any other owner, especially if you buy it a little bit further on in the future of a collection? So I can only imagine that the data this API provide is going to be more and more valuable as time passes and as you have more information to display here for people. And so if you want to display and get this information, you would simply need to get the object ID for the collection. And then again, page size, page index. As we saw, you could modify based on your needs. Okay, I've talked a lot about different APIs. I've given you a little bit of an idea of what is currently available from our side for APIs. And hopefully I've given some concrete examples on how you could use this API to enhance functionalities or to go faster with your development. There are obviously a lot of different use cases. I've stayed with some pretty basic ones maybe, but there are always different use cases that we can imagine and always many possibilities. At BlockVision, we are also doing customized solutions. So for example, if you haven't seen something that fits within the API that I've presented just earlier, it's also possible to customize and do a custom job. So always happy to get in touch, always happy to help builders, reach out, and definitely would be happy to have a discussion. Just want to know it's possible, it's out there. I want to talk very quickly, as I'm going to get toward the end of my talk, about some of the other things we do. We're a infra provider on SUI, and as an infra provider, we also provide RPC for projects. So we're going to provide RPC with great availability and latency that are scalable, and that also are going to be distributed in multiple nodes to avoid any issues and to ensure that people get a great response time. So it's also something that we definitely help with, and so I just want to mention it. Another area we work on is we're working with the Golang SDK, and we're trying to develop and maintain a Golang SDK for people who work on SUI. So for this, if you want to get more information, I actually invite you to go to the BlockVision GitHub, and you're going to be able to get more information into the SuiGo SDK. And you see it's usually updated quite regularly. For example, the last update here was last week. So it's also one of the things we try to do, again, to support builders, and really happy to be working on that. Another thing that we work on, apart from the infra part, is the Explorer for SUI Vision. I've shown SUI Vision a little bit through this talk, but I believe there's a lot of interesting information there. So it's also something we do. This Explorer is entirely powered by our RPC, by our APIs. And so basically what you see on SUI Vision is definitely something you could replicate for your project with the APIs that are available. So it's also a way to show builders what they can do, and happy to help them do so. So on this Explorer also, you're going to be able to get broad validator information about a different validator. It's something we do. You're going to be able to get information about top account, top packages. For example, NFT showcase. I've talked a little bit about the NFT showcase and like what is happening for each NFT. Coin page, we've seen it earlier also a little bit about the coin, the holders, and also being able to rank all the holders and so on. So also a lot of information there. And then finally, one of the last thing we released, the NFT dashboard, where you get a lot of information. We've seen it a little bit, and again, you would be able to do something similar for your project with these APIs. Also, we're extremely thankful to the SUI Foundation, because we actually won a grant recently for SUI Vision. So we're really, really thankful for this, and we really want to double our efforts and always improve on SUI Vision for the community. I finally want to just say that we have a lot of partners we're working with. Unfortunately, probably I don't have the exhaustive list of partners, because we're always partnering with more projects, but definitely happy to work with so many great projects on the SUI ecosystem, and also working with the SUI Foundation, with Miston Labs, that have been extremely supportive. So always happy to partner also with more people. And yeah, I would say this will pretty much conclude my talk for today. I really want to thank everyone for coming today. I hope this was a useful talk to help a little bit understand what are the solutions that are available today, and also to help people maybe a little bit less technical understand how they can potentially forward some information to their tech team and help their tech team when the tech team is looking for something. We're always available. So if any of you wants to get in touch, need some help for a project on the infra side, or would like to collaborate with the Explore SuiVision.xyz, always happy to do so. Please just reach out, and we're extremely easy to reach out to, and always happy to have a discussion. I really want to thank Henry today for inviting us, and for giving the chance, to give this talk for this workshop for the SUI KuCoin Labs Summer Hackathon. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the workshop. Yeah, that was really useful for people to know when they're building applications on SUI. All right, great. Let me see. It doesn't seem we currently have any questions from chat, but I think we can share this recording in our groups, and then once people have some questions, they can post them in the comments and such. So yeah, Thibaut, thank you very much for your time. Yeah, and
Thank
yeah,
you very much,
thank you
Henry.
for introducing, what APIs and other services that BlockVision has. And
Thank you very
yeah,
much for the
please,
opportunity.
yeah, and thank you guys for all the viewers for joining us. And yeah, please, if you guys haven't signed up for the hackathon yet, you can still do it at hack.sui.io. And yeah, so thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time. Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.